The roar was unlike anything heard before. A deep, persistent thrum that vibrated through the very air, a sound of immense power approaching. But high above, where the oxygen thinned and the temperatures plummeted, the Japanese interceptor pilots of late 1944 saw something different. They saw an American machine, ponderous and seemingly slow, a fat target lumbering across the blue expanse. He had 17 seconds before the cockpit filled with flames. The altimeter was spinning wildly towards zero, but what he saw through the smoke would change aviation history forever. December 1944. High above the industrial heartland of Japan, a four-engine Leviathan, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress, a technological marvel, made its painstaking way. This was not the quick, nimble fighter that darted through clouds. This was a flying fortress designed for distance and crushing payloads. Its silver skin, polished by the stratospheric winds, reflected the stark sun, making it stand out like a beacon. The Japanese air defense, a mix of Mitsubishi Zeros and Nakajima Oscars, climbed to meet it, their engines screaming in protest against the thin air. From their perspective, the B-29 was a lumbering giant, almost comically slow at its cruising speed of around 350 miles per hour, especially when compared to their own agile interceptors. They nicknamed it B-san or B-chan, a somewhat mocking, diminutive term, confident in their ability to engage. The B-29 was indeed an engineering marvel. It boasted a pressurized cabin, unheard of in most bombers of its era, allowing its crew to operate in relative comfort at altitudes exceeding 30,000 feet. Its powerful Wright R3350 duplex Cyclone engines, four monstrous 18-cylinder radial powerhouses, each delivering over 2,200 horsepower, propelled the colossal aircraft across vast oceanic distances. With a maximum bomb load of 20,000 pounds, it was designed to deliver devastation on an unprecedented scale. Its defensive armament was formidable, a battery of 12 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns, strategically placed in remote-controlled turrets across its fuselage, all operated by a central gunner who could switch between different firing positions with the flick of a button. Yet early missions revealed vulnerabilities. Operating from distant airfields in China, the round trip to Japan stretched the B-29's 3,250-mile range to its absolute limit, leaving little margin for error or evasive maneuver. The initial bombing campaign, dubbed Operation Matterhorn, aimed at precision strikes against Japanese industrial targets. But Mother Nature proved a more formidable adversary than anticipated. The high-altitude missions were plagued by relentless jet stream winds, some reaching 200 miles per hour, that threw bombs wildly off target. Clouds obscured vision, making accurate targeting a nearly impossible task. Freezing temperatures at 30,000 feet caused mechanical failures, engine fires, and frozen gun turrets, rendering the B-29 susceptible despite their advanced design. Many aircraft were lost not to Japanese fire, but to mechanical malfunctions or running out of fuel over the vast Pacific. 125 B-29s were lost during operations from China and India, with only a fraction shot down by Japanese forces. The Japanese leadership, observing these early, often ineffective raids, remained largely complacent, convinced the B-29 was more bark than bite, a costly, inefficient weapon that posed no existential threat. Their pilots would laugh, executing passes, sometimes even without firing, their derision a testament to their perceived superiority. They believed these silver giants were simply too vulnerable, too clumsy to truly matter. They had no idea that a far more terrifying kind of war was about to descend upon their homeland, an inferno born not of high explosives, but of fire, orchestrated by a man who saw their entire nation as one colossal target. The cold, calculated precision of General Curtis LeMay was a force of nature unto itself. Arriving in the Mariana Islands in January of 1945 to take command of the 21st Bomber Command, he inherited a B-29 force struggling against the elements and an entrenched enemy. LeMay was a pragmatist, a man who believed in results, not sentiment. He saw the previous high-altitude, daylight precision bombing strategy as a costly failure, draining resources and lives with minimal impact on Japan's war-making capability. The winds were too strong, the targets too small, the weather too unpredictable. A new approach was not just needed, it was an absolute imperative. He looked at the vast wooden cities of Japan, the sprawling, decentralized industries interwoven with residential areas, and he saw not individual factories but a single, massive, flammable target. LeMay's radical departure from conventional bombing doctrine was stark and dangerous. He ordered his B-29s to strip down their heavy defensive armaments, removing the bulky .50 caliber machine guns and ammunition, along with most of the crew, to lighten the aircraft. This increased their speed and allowed them to carry significantly more payload, primarily incendiary bombs. The most audacious and terrifying change was the altitude. Instead of flying at 30,000 feet in freezing temperatures, the superfortresses would descend to 5,000 to 10,000 feet, deep into the range of Japanese anti-aircraft fire and night fighters. This decision was met with understandable apprehension by air crews. Flying low at night over heavily defended cities without the protection of fighter escorts was a death sentence waiting to happen for many. But LeMay's logic was chillingly simple. Low altitude meant more accurate bombing, less fuel consumption on the climb, and a greater chance of hitting the vulnerable, flammable urban area. His rationale was rooted in Japan's unique urban and industrial landscape. Japanese cities were predominantly built from wood and paper, densely packed, creating ideal conditions for fire to spread uncontrollably. Furthermore, much of Japan's war production was not concentrated in massive, hardened factories, but in countless small workshops and homes, integrated directly into residential areas. Precision bombing, targeting specific industrial complexes, was inherently inefficient against such a decentralized system. Incendiary bombing, however, could wipe out entire districts, effectively destroying both residential infrastructure and the dispersed industrial base within it. LeMay understood that if Japan's ability to wage war was intertwined with its cities, then its cities had to burn. He famously declared, "If we lose the war, we'll be tried as war criminals." The stakes were impossibly high, the moral implications profound. The risks were immense. Flying at lower altitudes meant a greater chance of encountering Japanese night fighters and anti-aircraft artillery. Stripping away defensive weaponry left the bombers more vulnerable. Yet LeMay believed the potential rewards outweighed the risks. The objective was not just to destroy industrial capacity, but to break the Japanese will to fight, to force a surrender before a costly and bloody land invasion became necessary. This was a grim calculus of war, a cold, hard decision to unleash unimaginable destruction in pursuit of an end. The first major test of this new, terrifying strategy was set for Tokyo. The weather forecast was clear, the winds were calm, and the target, the sprawling capital, lay unsuspecting. The Japanese leadership, still confident in their ability to ward off high-flying bombers, could not possibly fathom the storm of fire about to descend. The mocking laughter of the Japanese pilots would soon be replaced by the screams of a burning city. The night of March 9, 1945, was a moonless expanse over the western Pacific, cloaking a deadly procession. 346 Boeing B-29 Superfortresses, stripped of most of their defensive guns and flying at altitudes as low as 5,000 feet, roared towards Tokyo. This was Operation Meeting House, Curtis LeMay's radical vision unleashed. The air inside the unpressurized cabins at this lower altitude was still frigid, but the crews could feel the vibration of their engines with an almost primal intensity, a steady thrumming that underscored the enormity of their mission. Below them, Tokyo, a sprawling metropolis of wood and paper, lay largely unaware of the horror about to befall it precisely 2 o'clock in the morning. The first Pathfinder B-29s released their payloads, a rain of napalm and white phosphorus. These initial bombs ignited a series of massive fires, creating an X-shaped target over the city that would guide the following waves of bombers. From the cockpit of his Superfortress, a pilot could see the distinct glow begin to bloom, a sickening orange flower blossoming in the darkness below. Then came the main force, unleashing thousands of M69 incendiary clusters. Each M69 bomb released 38 smaller bomblets upon impact, spreading a sticky, jellied gasoline across rooftops and into the narrow, winding street. On the ground, the initial explosions were followed by a terrifying cascade of secondary ignitions. The densely packed wooden houses, shops, and workshops, all constructed from highly flammable materials, became tinderboxes. Within minutes, individual fires merged, creating vast, unstoppable conflagrations. The heat was immediate and overwhelming, sucking the oxygen from the air and creating powerful fire whirlwinds, vortices of flame that spun with terrifying speed and height, consuming everything in their path. The Tokyo Fire Department, woefully under-equipped and overwhelmed, found its efforts futile against the rapidly spreading inferno. Water mains burst, roads melted, and the sheer heat incinerated anything and anyone caught in its grip. People desperately tried to flee, but the fire moved faster than they could run, trapping them in alleyways and along riverbanks. The air filled with the acrid smell of burning wood, flesh, and asphalt, a sickening perfume of destruction. You could feel the ground trembling under your feet, even miles away from the initial blasts. The sky, once an inky black, became a terrifying canvas of orange and red, reflecting the hellish glow of the city below. The smoke plume, a towering black column, rose to 40,000 feet, visible for hundreds of miles. The pilots above, looking down, described it as a boiling cauldron, a maelstrom of flame that stretched for miles. The sheer scale of the devastation was almost incomprehensible. 16 square miles of Tokyo, 7% of its urban area, were utterly annihilated. The police and fire departments estimated 83,793 people were killed, with 40,918 injured, and over 1 million left homeless. Post-war estimates often place the death toll closer to 100,000. Damage to Tokyo's war production was substantial, but the human cost was staggering, a mass casualty event unlike almost any other in history. The mockery of the B-29's slowness was silenced, replaced by the screams of a burning populace. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of a relentless campaign that would systematically reduce Japan's cities to ash, leaving a nation to grapple with a terror it had never imagined possible. The relentless firebombing campaign had reduced much of urban Japan to charred ruins, shattering industrial capacity and civilian morale. Yet the Japanese government, under the sway of military hardliners, continued to resist calls for unconditional surrender. The cost of an Allied land invasion, Operation Downfall, was projected to be astronomically high in both Allied and Japanese lives. It was against this backdrop of widespread destruction and unyielding resolve that the ultimate escalation of the B-29's destructive power was unleashed. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 named Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul W. Tibbets Jr., soared over Hiroshima carrying a single devastating weapon, the atomic bomb known as Little Boy. 3 days later, another B-29 boxcar dropped a second atomic bomb, Fat Man, on Nagasaki. The immediate impact of these atomic bombings dwarfed even the scale of the firebombing raids. In Hiroshima, a single flash of light and a colossal blast wave instantly obliterated 80% of the city, killing an estimated 80,000 people. Nagasaki suffered a similar fate, with an estimated 40,000 killed instantly. The aftermath introduced a horrifying new dimension to warfare: radiation sickness, a silent killer that would claim thousands more in the weeks and months to come. From the ground, the experience was apocalyptic. Survivors described a blinding light, an unbearable heat, and then a deafening roar, followed by absolute silence and a landscape transformed into unimaginable devastation. The mushroom cloud, a terrifying symbol of a new age, rose thousands of feet into the sky, a chilling testament to humanity's capacity for destruction. While distinct from the firebombing campaign in their nature and immediate effects, the atomic bombings were ultimately delivered by the very same aircraft that had systematically devastated Japan's cities. The B-29 Superfortress, once mocked for its slowness, had evolved from a symbol of technical challenge into the harbinger of total destruction. It forced Japan to confront the unimaginable, demonstrating an overwhelming power that no conventional defense could hope to counter. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender, citing the devastating power of a new and most cruel bomb and the daily evil of the air raids as primary reasons. The war was over, The legacy of the B-29 Superfortress and the strategic bombing campaign against Japan remains a complex and somber chapter in history. General Curtis LeMay's tactics, while controversial, were undeniably effective in achieving their military objectives, accelerating the end of the war and potentially saving countless lives that would have been lost in a protracted land invasion. Yet the cost in civilian lives and the wholesale destruction of cities raised profound moral questions that continue to be debated to this day. The B-29, the sleek silver giant that the Japanese had initially dismissed, had ultimately brought a proud nation to its knees, fundamentally altering the course of the Second World War and forever changing the face of aerial combat. Its journey from an underestimated, cumbersome target to the instrument of unprecedented devastation stands as a stark reminder of the brutal realities of wartime innovation and strategic resolve. What was your most surprising realization about the B-29's impact on Japan? Follow for more untold stories from history.